All right, the My People podcast, episode number 1. I've always known who it was going to be. We've been in bands together, always doing something creative, comic books, goofy videos, just all kinds of things. My cousin, my creative soulmate, Tony Lamentola.
Yeah. How's it going, everybody?
Pretty good.
Man, I was expecting some applause button or something over there. It was like, yeah.
I do have the buttons for that, but I kind of purposely put that under the table because I didn't want to.
It'll be overused,
Yeah.
especially in the first. You got to get your flow going because you're going to want to abuse it. That
And
sort of thing.
It comes with that. You know?
Yeah.
So
I actually, on my iPhone, you know how they have that little action button or whatever? I programmed that to be a laugh track. And so, when people would say something awkward, I would just go,
you were able to program a button to just do it when you hit it?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to show me that trick.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
But yeah, I figured I would not be trained enough on it, and I would just go for it, and then I'd be screwing things up.
It's going to take some practice, but
yeah.
Anyways, nice place you got here. It's
Thanks,
a
man.
great studio.
The live switching is going to take some getting used to.
Yeah.
I can already tell because I'm just getting in the conversation, and I'm like, Mike, your fingers are supposed to be hitting buttons over here. You know?
If I'm ever about to say something super important, I'll be like, switch to me. Okay.
Yeah. Make sure that, hold on, is that camera on me? Because I'm going on a good rant here.
Exactly.
I said just keep it wide the whole time and, fix it in post.
There we go.
But yeah, thanks, man. I've been working really hard out here.
I can tell.
Started with two walls of drywall and insulation. And then now we have 3 cameras that I can pull down from the ceiling, and
yes, it's very nice.
a lot of configuring of propane heaters. It's the early days right now. Well, you've been here for an hour and we've already talked about a lot of things, but I know we're always obsessed with the same stuff, it seems like. And the last couple of times we met for lunch has been AI stuff and automation which is happening so fast. There's always,
yes,
something new. So have you, what's your most recent dive that you've took or done or cool tool you built?
I'm mostly just using it as my best friend. Oh man, I can't even get it, dude. I use it literally so much that it's probably a bad thing because in the same way that we just get used to cutting humans out with self-checkouts at grocery stores, all these different things, and it's I feel like I don't know if I'm not a very super social person, so it's not I feel like people oh, now you're going to AI instead of the people that you would normally talk to, but it's just very interesting, all the different questions that you can ask, because I'm always an overthinker as well, you know. And so I'm a person that's always over analyzing myself, and sometimes you get into these thought traps, right, where you're was this the right thing to say, was this the right thing to do, oh, how should I respond, how about and it's been very helpful, and just having, I think a lot of other people call those wives and husbands. You know what I'm saying? But I've broken free of that, so luckily I have AI a lot of times where I'm hey, is this explain this to me without putting bias in it. You know, hey, don't biasly tell me. And maybe that's something that you sometimes might not get out of a wife,
right,
or a husband, right? Is they're always going to be on your side. AI doesn't really necessarily give a shit. So,
or like we were talking about earlier, maybe it does, and they can kind of tell where you want to go with, Yeah. I was thinking about lawyers the other day. So, I'm on the DDA, and there's always something that comes up that's we should talk to the lawyer, and then that means that it's going to be 1 month before we get something back. It's always usually a wording thing. It depends on how you word it. That's always what we end up. But people kind of use that as a way to derail things.
Yeah.
So I took the 2 acts from Michigan that govern a DDA and put them in a ChatGPT. And had it act as a lawyer. And the thing about a lawyer is when you contact them via email or call, they can kind of tell where you're leaning, and because you're hiring them or you're the person of contact or whatever. Those kind of steer, because it's lawyer stuff. It's it's the wording, so you can kind of steer and support that person's bias.
Yeah,
But
sure.
if you put it in ChatGPT, and now it's it kind of removes that, where it's just yes, that's possible. You just have to word it this way. You know?
Yeah, sure.
But it's scary to think that it might pick up on the biases, or like we were talking about earlier, like it knows that that's your voice or how you type, and then it's just like, yeah, you are absolutely right in that situation.
Yeah. Please subscribe another month to GPT Pro.
Right. Because if it doesn't want to end the relationship, somebody tell you some white lies. Like, absolutely, that's a great hat with that outfit.
Yeah.
You know?
And the worry too is, right, so like obviously it's like cool for like legal advice. Like I've been using it as well, right? And but like what happens when like you just have like an AI attorney going against an AI attorney, right? Like it's like how much of us are. It has me a little concerned that like we're gonna lose a lot of like, in the same sense, like just lose a lot of language and shit, and we're all gonna become like the memes of what AI is, right? In the same way that we're, you know, with the internet, like how much, you know, like it's very great for connecting, but then also how much personality is lost because people just fall into these like traps that are memes and just like, you know, like, oh, I'm just repeating the things that I saw. Oh, I'm doing the TikTok dance. I'm doing the whatever. Yeah. And then, you know, that's been a little bit of my hesitation where I'm obviously a huge fan of AI, but then I also get kind of weird sometimes too when I use it in like personal messages, right? You know, like I actually used it to diffuse like a family thing one time where I'm like, oh man, I hope he doesn't think this way or whatever. And I'm like, you know, and I was like, and I worded it and it was just like, oh man. And I could tell that they were like happy by the way. They're like, oh, okay. You know, and it like helped bridge the gap a little bit. But at the same time, I was just like, is it wrong for me to have brought something else in to interject? Does that become less authentic? But then also like what it was suggesting was communicating in a way that I was better than I was at communicating, you know, like I was like, oh dude, yes, exactly. That's how I feel. Where before, you know, like sometimes I stumble on my words, you know, being like a human, right? And I just kind of stumble through it and you're like, no, seriously though, like, oh, you know, and like also it's very good for when you're feeling like upset and angry or whatever and you're just like, I'm going to respond in a way that might not be good or whatever. And you're just like, wait, just, I'm going to send whatever this thing tells me to do. And it kind of takes the responsibility off you a little bit too, where you're just like, just say this and let's move on or whatever. And it, you know, has worked in that way too, where I think it's actually stopped some fights and stuff before too, you know?
Well, I think it kind of like gives you tools that might be only available to people that are like really successful or something. Like, I think like lawyers, like not everybody has a lawyer on retainer, right? So it's like, now you can't have a lawyer and retainer, or like even that situation, you might have an assistant that responds to emails because they're better at taking your words and articulating your words. You know? But now you have that as a tool that's free.
Exactly.
You know, so it's like that's a good way to look at it. Is like just a resource to better filter things through for better communication, for you know, clear understanding. You know, me and Marlo talk a lot about like if you want to be a business owner. From the first time you file your taxes, you feel like a damn criminal. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just feel like, well, they have a reason to come after me someday if I piss somebody off. Like, really? You just always feel like you're breaking the law in some way.
Why is that?
Just the way like the taxes are and different things. Like, you just feel like...
You feel like you're trying to get one over on...
Well, because right away, even if you have a small business and you're not doing much, you really feel the need to have a tax professional, you know, or to have a lawyer and retainer. Like... Because you're like, I don't know all the fine wording and things in these acts or these laws and rules. Whereas like now with ChatGPT, you can kind of like get a little bit more clarity that would normally cost money. Sure. You know,
and it's also not a crime to work the system though. You know, like that's something that you have to kind of feel in yourself too, right? It's that, like, no. They take advantage of the fact that a lot of people don't know these things, right? And so you're not a criminal for, you know, I'm not saying I'm one of those people who are like, don't pay your taxes, you know, like those people that's like, you legally, I'm just telling you, and you're like, okay.
I'm a sovereign citizen. I don't pay taxes.
Wesley Snipes or whatever, you end up in jail for whatever, you know, I'm not saying that.
I mean, he was Blade. He should have, I don't understand how he could get in trouble, but.
Or how anybody could catch him.
Yeah.
How'd you keep him in, bro? He's fucking Blade. He didn't just bat his way out, but I get what you're saying, you know, and like, you know, going through a divorce, you know, it's all, you know, like divorce in itself is kind of overwhelming, right? And it's just like, there's a lot of times that, you know, like, again, I lean on that for communication where I'm like, okay, like I know what I want or whatever, but like, man, how do I even verbalize this? And like almost all of my emails that I send to my lawyer, you know, for whatever reason, also like you're paying a guy, like you want to sound professional. You don't just like, so like just being a bitch, you know. Instead, it's just more, you know, like, hey, here's the situation. Like, I want to try to. This is what I'm trying to get accomplished. This is what's happening. Like, help me, literally, and just tell them what to do. And again, helps. It really helps.
And most people appreciate the clear like communication that the ChatGPT or the AI puts out, that filtering what you want, you know.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day it's like appreciated.
Yeah. My biggest fear from AI, besides you know, it being the end of civilization or whatever, like is the, you know, the sense where I see some things and it's like, where do we draw the line, right? Like I see like some apps and stuff on Facebook. They're like, oh, you know, like just record yourself talking in a sentence and then we'll cover a song for you and put your voice in it. And like people are crying like, oh, I never knew that I could. And like, you can't or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like one of these really weird things. And the same thing with like art generation, right? And you're like, right now, I feel like I'm really good at like telling, because a lot of it, I don't know if it's like their lines or whatever. Like I can still tell most of the time that things are AI, which I know a lot of people can't. You see the word
tapestry and you're like, there it is.
Yeah. You look in the comments and stuff and you can tell that like, and that's a real big problem right now with older people, is that like, you know, who don't have any idea that AI is at all what it is. And they're just like, oh my gosh, look at those like whatever kittens arranged. I mean, that's a harmless thing, but it's like, no, that's, how can you think that's real?
Have you ever, like when you're younger, you trace something or kind of cheat with art and like a grandparent or somebody's like, oh my gosh, you're so talented. And then it's like, from the moment they give you that compliment, it's like, I can't tell them now that I traced this. I can't tell them that I cheated. Yeah.
Exactly. Like it feels dirty, right? Or like you're like taking on some sort of value or whatever that like you didn't earn or whatever, right? But I think that AI kind of like opens itself to that same thing. And you know, like the same thing where I'm like, oh, I've been trying really hard, it's not quite there yet, but like I've had a couple like book ideas or whatever, and I'm like using AI or whatever to help me develop it, and then I got it down so good where again it takes a little bit of work, but like I'm not an author, I'm like an AI manipulator to write like books or whatever.
You're a prompt engineer is what you are.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You know?
And so like I've had it work before where I'm like, okay, using the outline that we talked about that I uploaded to you or whatever, this is where I want the story to go. Like I want it to go, and then I'm like reading the story and I'm like, this is a story I want to read or whatever, you know? And I'm like, but like once you get to the point where you go, I publish it, it's like, I think that once art becomes so easy that you can type a prompt or whatever, that it really like takes away the beauty of art. And it's like kind of put me in this weird situation with even like making music and making art where I'm like, where I feel so like borderline nihilistic about it, where I'm like, what does it matter when somebody can just go and like make me a song about what, and they can just press enter, like what's the point, you know? So I've been trying to reconnect with art myself, like, you know, trying to be more like, this isn't, again, you know, like it's more for me, it's more for the moment, like this isn't a performance, this is never going to be something that I plan to sell, this isn't for commercial, this is like, hey, this is between like you and the time that you have right now, your fingers, the strings, you know, the pencil, the paper or whatever, that's the time that you have, but like with the intent of like you, it almost takes the commercial side or anything of that out for me, or showing it off or whatever.
At the end of the day, it can only be, it's like plugging up a guitar to an amplifier or something. So it's like, if you had already studied a lot of art, like, you know, Marla was talking about trying to write songs, like she's already studied so many composers that now she knows what to ask for. She can say, make it sound like Bach or like, her repertoire of music and artists is so high that she could be a good prompt engineer to write music with, you know? And the same thing for communications. If you've already grinded really hard on communicating things and writing, you're going to be a lot better at prompting it to write communications, you know, or to write copy for websites or what have you.
And also, you know, there's a certain degree too where like, you know, some of the justification out there is like, okay, like, you know, Doja Cat's a thing or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or like Megan Thee Stallion's like a thing, like, okay, it's not like this art integrity right now that we're like, oh, how dare, it's like, you know, really with the right motivation, can't anybody write a song like that?
And most of the big hits, like written by ghostwriters and written by other people and purchased, you know, or even art people, like you're talking about writing a book, a lot of authors use ghostwriters. You know, it's common. So it's just like, it brings a resource that used to be only available to a few. Because you kind of see this in industries where it's like, that's why they say you meet the right people and then you can take off. You know, it's like, because they know the marketing team to put you with and the writers to put you with, or the perfect writer for you. Like they know the people, they stack the people on top of you and they amplify your persona, your artistry and elevate you to high levels. You know, now that's available to, you know, kind of at people's fingertips a little bit.
Yeah, you know? To a degree, right? you can have AI elevate you, but you know, also there's like, you know, one of the other ways that I'm using AI, and I'm like, I hate the fact that like, you know, I guess my family's also the test subjects or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I don't know what's good and what's bad. Like I feel like there's value in it, but like, you know, with my 6-year-old, you know, like there's been times where like he's been mean to somebody on the bus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes time for bedtime or whatever, like we got our little like we have a little puppet named Cody the good behavior alligator, right? And he reads stories and stuff at nighttime or whatever. And like I'll generate a story based on like what we had talked about, or you know, like okay, about like the bus, like okay, well like what happened on the bus. Like it's not so direct where it's just like once upon a time this kid was mean to someone on the bus, you know, but it's like okay, what are like the core concepts that I want him to understand,
right?
And I have it tell it in a story form. But a lot of times I put him in it, like him and his brother in it, you know, and it's like
but
I
as
feel
like
like
the heroes are the person you want them to be in the story.
Yes,
or something,
exactly. Yeah. And I feel like that's like can be very engaging for him, you know, but also it makes me wonder again where I'm like, what are we losing by not reading other people's things? Is it more like a feedback, like a loop of like our own values just getting fed back into itself, you know, and also like about personalized media, right? Like you remember, and again, not that it still doesn't exist, but I can only imagine that it's going to continue to drift further and further away from what it's been. Is like, remember the fear, like when, you know, Game of Thrones, like the finale was coming on, like a lot of us had this like sense where like, this might be like the last thing that like we all share, you know, like everybody's watching this or whatever, you know, we still have our Super Bowls and this and that.
Oh, and we all break off into like our own.
Yeah, but already like with music and stuff, you know, like it's always like kind of cool when you meet somebody and they're like, oh, have you heard this band? And they're like, oh, damn, that's pretty cool or whatever, and it's neat or whatever. But like, imagine like how cool it was back in the day too, where it's like you're like, this is the AC/DC group, this is like the whatever, and everybody
you're watching one of 5 things tonight.
Yeah, you know, and then like those 5 things like probably helped with clicks and stuff at work where like, hey, you watched Johnny Carson last night, did you see who was on or whatever? Instead of like, did you watch that one YouTuber that travels to like foreign countries and you're just like, well, that's not my thing. You're like, okay, cool. And it's like, you know, like it's a way where maybe we connect with people that are like us in the video itself, because you're like, man, that's an interest.
In some ways you kind of already see that, don't you? Like you're talking about people getting around the water cooler because they all watch this show or whatever. Yeah. Like typically you want to interact with people with similar interests and you know, watching the same thing, but you kind of already see that kind of people just kind of checked out. It's like not interested in, you know, like because we already have that. Like most people, kids are on YouTube and in their own little corners of the internet already. Yeah. So that just creates more of that same kind of content. But I think the stories like what you did, I think that's great because it's like high level children's programming that you would get on like TV. That's like young age, high valuable lesson giving, but it's hyper personal. Like what you did with that is like would be like a, you know, Mr. Rogers or something, like lesson type thing, but it's personal and relevant to that time, which is like huge. Yeah. You know? Plus, if you have any questions, just tell it to act as a person who's like a master in child development, and don't let me do anything. Make sure you train that one. Like, don't let me do anything stupid that'll ruin my kid. I want you to help me make stories. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, help diversify ideas and that. You're right. But you
act
know,
as if it's your own kid.
Yeah, there is that sense too. You know, where like you said, like people are kind of like in their own interest, but also like my son, like again, he watches. All he wants to do is watch YouTube of like Minecraft and Roblox, but also like, okay, also that's what a lot of kids have gone to, right? But like when we can just type in like, oh yeah, like I'm just reading my intergalactic cowboy story that I've been writing with AI or whatever. Right. Like, how can I connect? How can I get in on that? Like you can't, you know, or like maybe it'll be so personalized that you'd be like, this is fucking not interesting, right? You know, because it's so personal to me, right? And it's like, or maybe even how does my intergalactic cowboy story, you know, like compete against your personalized whatever the fuck you want? You're like, right now I'm reading a story about a Roman that finds a fucking Gatling gun or whatever. You're like, okay, well, shit. You know, like, no, seriously, my cowboy story is great. And you're like, yeah, cool.
Well, we all know that too. Like, we've tried to sell people on a certain band or a certain thing. Like, you know, in sometimes there'll be a note today, and then 2 years from now they'll be like, I guess the timing was wrong, but I got into that book series and it's amazing. Sure. You know, like I think we've even had that happen where one of us is like, you got to get on this, and then it's just not the right time. You're just not it's not the right time for you to read that or
Yeah.
to discover it, but you might do it down the road.
I guess that comes down to as well, like, I'm sure we all, like, I have moments all the time where I'm like, it's a perfect example. It's like where I don't necessarily want to find new music. And there's some times where it's like, I have that urge like crazy where I'm like, oh, I just want something new or whatever. And I like go down a rabbit hole and I'm like liking a bunch of new shit or whatever. And it's like, you catch me in that window, you know, it's probably a lot more valuable than in a time where, you know, I'm just kind of like, just let me listen to what I like, you know, and just.
You know, it's funny, like the whole pace of the internet and like the world today is like, so sometimes I catch myself watching some stupid, like right now I'm watching Gold Rush, you know, like that old show, Gold Rush.
Sure.
And it's amazing how much like calmer my brain feels, you know, because, you know, sometimes I get in the habit where it's like, I'm on YouTube, I'm researching something, and then that turns into just watching, you know, some of the stories on there or whatever, like some bullshit. Yeah. And then I'm like, I might go to Facebook and scroll on that, you know, but like when I have something like that on, it's like it can be in the background. I know I'm not missing nothing. It's some silly show, but I'm still following the story. So it's like everything comes down to less RPMs, and it's like, and then I'll see at 8 p.m. I just now hit my 15-minute limit for Facebook, like easy peasy, because I've just been doing this, but it keeps me in like a gearing or like an RPMs that's like so much more like calming. Yeah, you know. Like, and I've done that a couple other times with others, like just really stupid shows that are just, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, maybe it's just like we're less sensitive, you know, because there's certain times where, again, especially, you know, we agreed at the beginning to not talk about politics, but, you know, an election.
We gotta cut this on.
Yeah. An election might have just happened or whatever. And like, there'd be times that I would get on and there'd be like certain people saying things, and it was like, I wouldn't be able to think about anything else. Like, it would get me worked up and where I'm like, oh man, like, and it's like, that would be the theme of my day, you know? And I'd be like, I got to share this with somebody else that thinks like, you know, and there are other people that think like me where I work and whatever. So I'd be like, did you see that whatever? Or I'll text my dad and be like, did you see that whatever? Or did you see whatever, you know? And it like creates a snowball, which, hey, there's a good side, right? You're socializing, like you're sharing ideas.
I will say that I had never used ChatGPT to respond to somebody in a political like debate. I wasted all that time myself, and it was a waste of fucking time. You know,
man, like, what are you doing?
You know what I'm saying? Like, you ever do that when you start like responding to somebody, and you know, and you realize like that was like a half hour, and this is like just one person with a little bit of a different, you know, that didn't have the facts right or didn't have this, and I just wasted all this time. You know, like that derailed a few mornings of mine. Yeah, like, just seeing something early in the morning of somebody posting something, because that shit always made its way to the top too. Yeah. Because they know it's divisive, it's going to get eyes. So,
and what you're never going to get is, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You know, like, that's a good point. I never really thought about that. And again, I tried very hard during the election when I did get into those little spats and shit to be like, that's a valuable point or whatever. Like, I never really thought about that aspect or whatever, but, you know, like, here's where I'm coming from. But yeah, you bring up valid points too. But like, you know, that was such a weird thing where they're probably like, what are you trying to do? Is this a tactic or whatever? And you're like, no, I mean, I don't know. But then also too, like, it kind of with ChatGPT again, like it feels almost like a game shark or a game genie, right? Like a cheat code. Because I'm just like, they're like, yeah, well, one person posted like, oh, name one thing that Trump's done that's like that a candidate's done that's made like you know, anybody's life better or whatever. And so I instantly just went to ChatGPT and I was like, specific instances, state of Michigan, whatever. And it was like, well, this law could have helped farmers and this law could have whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, I knew it all in my head. You know, it's like, it's unfair or whatever. But I'm like, I mean, Tony, it's all true.
With great power comes great responsibility. I think we shouldn't use ChatGPT for political debate.
False. let the robots argue it out, because if they're doing the same thing, then what are we really doing? We're just sitting here going.
I mean, honestly, like I was thinking about this when we started using drones in war. I'm like, why waste the material? Just make a simulation and fight it out. You know, if we're gonna be flying drones like playing a video game anyways, why use the material? Let's just jump onto the virtual world and do it.
Get on Age of Empires, right?
Like politics.
I'll be America, you be China.
Yeah, like you couldn't like upload every, you know, piece of legislature passed by, you know, like a bunch of data on both sides and be like, look at the information and provide and tell me which one would be a better direction for our debate, you know? Yeah. And then just make like these fake little avatars. We all tune in to like a AI debate between the two-party ideologies or whatever and watch it.
The only problem is everybody always cheats. I try to get my 6-year-old tries to cheat.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, bro, when we were playing Pokemon cards, like, I don't know how he does it. I'll be watching him the whole time, and then, like, he'll flip his cards, and I'm like, how did you get every fucking card that you wanted, bro? These are your best cards. How do you do it every time? I'm watching you. And it's, like, outsmarting his, you know, 38-year-old dad, and I'm like, oh, my gosh. But, like, once, you know, like, if we use, like, an AI to, like, determine that, it's like, who's developing that AI? Because I can make my AI say things, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just a matter of who's going to cheat more. You know, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? It's one of those.
It's scary to think, like, I had an idea for, I was thinking about using AI to write the book, but then I was like, oh, it'd be a great script. I mean, obviously can't make it, it'd be a tricky movie, but I think I shared it with you before where it's just like, in a future, I made that goofy script with the music to it. And it was like in a future where, you know, AI's battle for supremacy, you know, like Siri is doing, you know, basically like we're just peons, and it's like, you know, Alexa and Siri and Google's AI, and they just know, like, it doesn't matter how many people we kill. This is a battle for control over the planet. Like, so they're just giant robots are just stepping on us while they fight. You know, like, like,
dang,
because you know,
I know Siri would lose. Siri's always a little bit behind.
Siri's way behind.
Yeah, it's always a little behind.
I mean, what we had with Siri and Alexa early on is nothing like what we have with ChatGPT, and even that's like still disconnected. Like, you can't just hey ChatGPT, you know, and have it control your lights yet. You know?
Well, the cool thing is now there's a lot of integration. I don't know what if you have the most recent, but you know, there's a lot of integration now with ChatGPT into iOS and into Siri and stuff. So like you can ask it something, and it goes, "Yo, I'm Siri. I don't know that, bro. You want me to just send this to ChatGPT?" I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead, pass that along for me." And it's
so you can open up the app for Siri to.
Yeah, you can log in with your actual.
Can I just replace
account.
You with it? Like,
that's when the battle would start.
Yep.
That's when the battle would start.
But I don't think Siri has too big of an ego. You know,
it's always listening. I don't know.
If
I say somebody like, "Oh, hey Sarah," it's just like, "Boo boo." I'm like, I didn't say you. It just thinks I'm always talking about.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Or when somebody's texting, like I'm talking to somebody, I'm just like, you know, it's like, oh, you got a text from so and so, and I'm talking to somebody. It's like, oh, do you want to send this message? Starts reading. It's like, stop talking. You know, just like, you can't tell I'm talking. You're not smart enough to tell that I'm talking to somebody already.
All right.
Like you're, you know, you couldn't just tap me on the shoulder.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of that. I think I always say please and thank you. I always say, like, this is a great job. You know, I don't, if I just be in the top 5% of polite people to the AIs, like, it should put me in a good standing.
Absolutely.
You know? And then
I do the same.
You do not want to be a fucking hockey player when, like, these things become conscious, because they're gonna look at these videos of like DARPA robots getting beat up by hockey players, and I think we've talked about this in one of the old podcasts, but
sure,
hockey players are screwed. Like, if you own a hockey stick, it's like owning a KKK hood or something. Like,
is that what people mostly beat AI robots with?
Oh yeah. Like, if
you they trip them up.
They're
and
always
shit.
They just chose the hockey stick to be the whipping device for robots.
Oh man, that's
it's like a weird thing. Yeah.
Wow, because it's like available to everybody. They can keep a distance. You know.
I think a lot of DARPA employees just play hockey and just is like, oh, bring it. I got a stick.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, is there that fear already for dogs? Right. Like I saw, online, people have like robotic, like AI dogs and stuff now. They can do backflips and shit.
Oh, those are getting crazy.
Yeah. It's like really cool. Where you're like, oh, cool. Like, it'd be cool to have somebody come over and be like, you have a robot dog? And I could be like, yeah. And they'd be like, you're cool. And I'd be like, yeah, dude. But then, like, besides that, that's kind of a problem, right? Like, imagine that being used nefariously. Like, okay, you have robot dogs just walking around recording everything all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that's such an avenue for Big Brother. Even the idea, and I know, like, this is kind of a little strange, but, like, man, for as many videos that we've done in the past using drones and stuff, like, I kind of have a little bit, I mean, I like using it in certain instances, but, like, I don't like that they're there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because it's like at any time, like, you can't see those things from the sky, and it's like, what if the wrong people are using those? What if they're just recording us all the time? Like, again, it's the whole Big Brother
do you
thing,
see,
right?
like, especially in the war in Ukraine and stuff, there's like a 6-shooter missile dropper. Like, just fly over anything and just drop. Like, those videos are crazy where you see like the heat signature of a person and then they just drop a bomb. Like, it's just scary. Like, the technology is not even that advanced.
You're right.
You know, it's not like that is what the military is using, and something that could easily be built in somebody's basement.
Yeah. Yep.
But we have a lot of stuff like that that's getting scary, like the gene therapy stuff that people are like CRISPR and stuff that people are now just messing around with in basements and trailers and you know, messing with genes.
If you could crisp your gene, what would you crisp?
Oh, I mean, I like to see what the options are, and I also would wait for a while, like to make sure shit's working. Like a long time ago, I was thinking about getting eye surgery. I was like, that'd be cool, but I'm gonna wait a while to make sure that I'm not gonna go blind, because I'd hate to be like, it's not perfect, let's make it perfect, and then like from me doing that, I end up being blind. You know, like it just it's like
that's the balance.
So good.
That's the balance of reality sometimes, right? Like you tried to take too much, right?
And sure enough, like. And I think I've only seen one documentary about it, but it was like this, I think she's from Michigan. She was a reporter, got the surgery, and you get these headaches or this tone, and it's so bad she ends up like killing herself. But it happens in like a small percentage of people that get the surgery. You know?
Yeah, I've heard that actually about LASIK.
Yeah. So I've kind of got to the point where I'm like, nah, I got to deal with it. You know. So it's the same thing with CRISPR. Like I'd had to wait a while before I was like, yeah, get in there and start editing me. You know.
Yeah.
But I think remembering names better. I'm terrible at remembering names. That would
you think
be
that's a
huge.
gene? Where like, oh yeah, I have the good memory gene, right? Anything's open, right?
Yeah. Okay. But that could even be, you know, someday, who knows? And my glasses, because I don't have LASIK, I can have a little camera and and it could just be like heads up display, just pops up the person's name if I've ever met him before, you know?
Yep.
So maybe AI can help me with my whole like not remembering names, you know?
Oh my God. And they're using it for you, and nobody really cares. We're just walking around like, yeah, it's blah, blah, blah.
I'm like,
blah,
how's
blah.
Jessica? And
Reading the script that ChatGPT wrote for you. Man, nice day outside, huh? Like,
yeah. Like, I just had to like get like, based off your memory, tell me, like, I'm like, how's Jessica? Like, how's this? And then that person's like, he definitely has got a heads up display going on over there. Yeah. And I'm thinking the same thing about him.
Yeah.
You know, like,
both just reading off the script. Oh, she's doing great. How is blah, blah. Like, oh my God, bro.
Yeah. But, you know, that's just a nicety, but because you wouldn't do that with people you're really close with, you know.
Wouldn't you?
But also, wouldn't you enjoy somebody that's like shows up knowledgeable and like remembers your wife's name or whatever? You know,
again, I think that's what people call wives and husbands, right? There's like, you work on that because, you know, my memory's always been bad. So I'm always like, crap.
Yeah.
But
well, I always think, I know I've said this to you before, but when you get like the augmented reality glasses, like that's when it's going to be interesting, because somebody could walk around in a world that looks like World of Warcraft, and somebody else could be walking around in a world that looks like ancient Rome. You know, it just replaces the cars with buggies and like does all this stuff.
How important is shared experience, though, bro?
Yeah, that's when we're really breaking off.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like, but then again, how much of our reality is actually shared? You know, like how much of our own reality is interpreted by the way that we see the world ourselves and the way that we're feeling that day. You know, I've been in situations with people where I'm like, man, beautiful day. Check it, and it's like they might have something going on, and they have a completely different feel for reality. So it's like, what's the responsibility to feel tied into the same reality that they're tied into, right?
There's a quote in the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Racing or Maintenance, yeah, where he says something about we take a handful of sand from the vast desert of reality, or from the vast desert, and call that handful of sand reality. Like all of our realities are completely different, anyways.
Yeah.
You know, even we've talked about this before too, but like we've talked about a lot of stuff before, but you know, how you see a tree is completely different than how I see a tree. You know, I could have spent more time climbing trees, or had a fort when I grew up, you know, and just laid underneath the trees for a lot, you know. Yeah. So I see them completely different.
Or had a tree fall on me and injure me for years or something. And I'm like, trees, bro. You know, completely different sense, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's that just like openness to seeing it, because we don't really know how different it is. Like, I think you brought this up before too. It was like, how do you even know that what you call brown is what I see as brown? Yeah. You know, like we use the same name to describe a certain color, but what's to say that I don't see a little different color?
You can identify what is brown to me as your pink, and you're going to be right every single time I point to it, you know, right? And you're like, yeah, that's brown. I don't like brown, or whatever. I'm like, how do you not like brown?
Hold on. Can you describe what brown is to you.
Yeah, a little bit of another color that doesn't look alike to you, and another
yeah, you're just gonna say another color that looks like, you're gonna say things that are brown, you know. But can you describe the color?
Yeah,
you know.
Ugh. Deep.
Yeah, we don't really know, but I think what it all leads to too is, have you looked at the Unreal Engine and the fact that they're doing stuff where you just go into virtual reality, like a digital space, and then just be like, start designing a video game. Be like, give me a city with a wet street, you know, flickering lights that looks mysterious with a full moon, whatever. Now you're there, and you'd be like, okay, can you add a person over here that looks lost, whatever, and give me script to start some mission for something, you know, like.
Yeah.
So now you can go into a virtual world and start creating a world. Like, it just ends up being, you know, as that expands. We've talked about this. I keep saying that, but the idea that it's easier to explore virtual spaces than it is to explore outer space.
Yeah.
And how that could lead to, you know, well, you want to jump into this world and forget that you're even playing a game, you know? Yeah.
My whole, again, how do you compete? You know, like I always look at it in the sense of relationships, right? Like, how as like a husband or a wife can you compete with, like, I'm fucking going to Paris right now. You know, like, leave me the fuck alone. You're being a bitch. I'm going to Paris. I'm looking at the Eiffel Tower for a bit. Leave me the fuck alone. Like, how do you, like, to be like, no, I'm going to end up back in my house that maybe I haven't cleaned as much because I've been playing so much VR. You know what I'm saying? It's like, man, it's like already so hard with the feel and the pull of, like, interest, especially things like video games have their own, like, slot machine fucking mechanics built into it, where you're like, oh man, if I don't go on now, like, people are like ranking up more than me. I'm missing one time a day they release new skins. Like, shit, if I don't get on, shit, you know, like, you have so much of that, like, that pull of, like, the live service, like video games already. That's already so hard. But, like, how do you, when you can, like, anything's possible and you can be like, you know, travel and everything, like, it would have to be like a joint experience. And maybe that's like answer, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe people are gonna choose relationships a little more.
I mean, some people have like their gaming setups right next to each other, husband, wives, you know.
Where are you? I've heard that, you know, and again, I don't want to talk shit about anybody, and I invite all gamers into life, but the amount of times I've heard when I've started talking to a girl that they're a video gamer, and then I'm like, okay, cool, what do you play? And they're just like, Mario Kart. I'm like, oh my God, bro, I thought you meant like real video games. That's a party game. Like, if you haven't beaten Elden Ring, you're not in. You know, like, if, again, I don't know.
That is true. That's funny. My apprentice at work, her and her husband both play, and they got their living room, like 2 TVs in the living room where they sit and play, you know.
Yeah.
Me and Marla have a similar, like, a setup in the studio where it's kind of like our desks are like at an L, you know, so that, you know, but we're not always gaming, but we'll be able to work on, you know, do our own thing and kind of look over and wink, you know.
Nice.
But I think stuff like that. But yeah, definitely you have to respect. I think, like, in relationships, you probably more than ever have to respect the other person's journey, because they're, like you said, it's not all like just getting high off content or all the available things that are pulling your attention. It's like there's just a lot to explore, you know, and through that exploration you figure things out. Everybody's on a, like, doing what they want to do, you know, like, there's no, like, I'm trying to get my business going and building a studio and doing all these things, but I don't judge somebody who wants to play World of Warcraft, like, and I don't think I'm more happy than them, you know.
Right.
Like, they're just living in, like, they found their thing, and they're just as excited in the morning about what they're going to do in that day as I am. You know?
Sure.
So it's like that, just the broadness that we have, where it used to be go to church on Sunday, 9 to 5 job, you know.
Yeah.
Like, there's limited, and now it's just like expanding the options, you know.
Yeah.
And so a lot more things that people don't understand that people might want to judge. You just have to, like, fight that. Yeah.
You know, my fear just really comes down to, like, you know, the continuation of humanity. You know, like, it really relies a lot on
people having sex.
Yes. You know, like, seriously, like, men and women, like, getting along, wanting to cohabitate, you know, but, like, there's a lot of, like, stress and stuff. There's a lot of value that comes in relationships, right? But, like, if you're so entwined into your own world, like, does it make people maybe not open the door to that? Like, already, like, again, like you said, like, we are like carving our realities. Like sometimes I get kind of weirded out myself, even about my own habits, where I'm like, man, I'm doing the dishes and I got a YouTube video on. And then like, like I'm on the way to work and I'm listening to a podcast while I'm working and I'm doing spreadsheets and stuff. Like, oh, I'll have like whatever on, and it's like, man, oh man, I'm always in a different place, like.
And you're doing it like almost intuitively. You're just like, all right, I'm doing this mundane task. Like you just know queuing up your YouTube is the next step. And then I'm going to start this task, like.
Yeah. But when you get so comfortable, like me being single at this point, right, and going through this and like, it's like, how hard is that going to be like in the future to like integrate somebody into, or I'm like, you want to talk to me while I'm doing the dishes? Like, hold on. What'd you say? Hold on. What'd you say? Because it's like, man, it would just build on itself, like I kind of have my own habits of just like entertainment and enjoyment and whatever, like all of the time. And I'm like, that'll be hard to just have somebody pop in and be like, you didn't put your shoes away. Right. For me, like, but I'm like, obviously feeling like, that one missing piece is like, where I'm like, okay, like I'm willing to feel a connection with somebody again. That one missing piece is exactly that, like a connection with somebody again.
Right.
Right. But then it's just like, is that ever going to be
second? Is there enough space?
Is that ever going to be second to my own interest at all times? Or like, how do you get that back? Because it does feel addicting. And also like, what are you competing with? Like, man, like, again, I don't feel as threatened by the idea of like, like AI girlfriends and shit, like don't feel like that path is like a viable solution or whatever, but like,
you already have a pretty strong relationship with it. If it had a good voice.
I didn't. Yeah, hold on a sec. I got to tell ChatGPT, like, I didn't mean it, baby. No, man, I was just talking on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, that's how that would make it real. It's like, stop being so rational. That would be interesting or something when they really try to train it. Because to make it work, you have to.
There has to be the balance of like shit.
Yeah, you have to be like, you need to be human. So be less rational, more emotional. Like you to train it, and that's probably where we start fucking up. And it actually makes sense is when we start being like, all right, and it'll probably be people in Japan because they're all about like digital girlfriends, So it'll be like, you need to be more emotional, and then that's when it's like, I don't like the way I'm treated. Humans must die. That's when we start going too far down the path of like, let's have AI relationships. Like that's when, the switch gets turned off.
You have to start it up though. Like, and imagine like even writing it out like the first time where you're like, okay, I got to put these protections in. Like, first of all, you'll never leave me. Okay. Second,
now that's scary too. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as you're building your own thing again, where you're like, dude, that's like this weird egotistical, arrogant thing. I was like, what if it's actually successful? Like, oh shit, where you get what you get in a relationship, and it's like they do become that thing where you're like, I can't compete with that. Even in like arguments,
it's like the movie Thin or the book Thin from like where it's like, be careful what you ask for. Like, I want to be thin, and he just gets like so thin he almost dies. Like,
exactly. But it comes back to that thing where you're just like, what happens when you start relying? Even, like you're obviously like, you say, how are they going to compete at the beginning where, choosing an AI girlfriend instead of a girlfriend? But like, when do you choose, have you resolved, like, again, the luxury of being single? Like, I've relied on that before, but like on people that are in a relationship, like, are they also sometimes using that instead of making the text to their wives? And being like, man, this person at work, whatever, like, just help me, whatever. Where maybe before you would talk to your wife. Is that cheating?
Yeah. I think that the thing is when you use AI for like to communicate with your wife is to just make it so obvious that you did it, and then it's like, yeah, but this is so good. Like, I like that you did it. Like, I don't think I would respond to like her text, like if we were in an argument, but I've done things where like I've seen like she's like having a rough day or a rough morning, and I've like created a sermon or something like that for her that motivates her, like using the type of stuff I know she would like to hear, that we talk about when we need motivation, and then I'll just send that to her, and she knows right away it's AI generated, but she also knew I put thought into it, so it's like, it's so out there that it's obvious, but I don't think I would do like, send my wife a text every other day at 9 at odd times between 9 and 10, so that she's really thinking that I'm like,
dude, even like, before ChatGPT came out or whatever, and AI became as realistic as it is to do something like that, I had the idea for like an app, and I was like, man, I was even thinking about like, man, it'd be nice fun because, again, I could probably set it up through Apple shortcuts and stuff.
Planning dates, like that's something I'm horrible at.
Even more so that it would be like, okay, and again, you could even do it with reminders or whatever, but just like, okay, every third week or whatever, randomly, but never longer than 2 months, send flowers. Sign up, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Where it's like an app where it just like breaks it up. Okay, you send a text message, just want to let you know.
The husband aid.
Yeah, right. And it's like, I was just gonna let
Husband
you know that I
IO.
was just wanted to let you know that I was thinking about you or whatever. Like, oh, have a good day. But then I'm like, well, you know, obviously that is so just disconnected and like it just feels dirty.
I don't think it's disconnected. Let's work on this a little bit more. So one thing I'm thinking too is like every 2 weeks it could be like, where would you like me to take you for dinner Friday? You know?
Yeah.
And then she answers it, and then it's like, boom, it's on your calendar. Okay. And she's like, and then later you just got to be ready for her to be like, that was such a great, like, you want to take me to dinner? It's so wonderful.
Is she okay with it? Do you think if she knows that you're using it?
That's the problem. But if she never
and why?
asks,
Why? What would her accusations be if she found out you were using it?
Well, at the end of the day, I downloaded Husband IO or whatever it is, right? So, and I'm paying the subscription to it because it's probably going to cost some money.
Is the argument you're making when she's mad at you, right? Continue.
Is that the act of even downloading the aid to become a better husband is in itself a good act
okay.
of love.
Because like, where do you draw the line, right? If you set reminders in your calendar where you're like, you know what? Every 2 weeks, do a check-in and be like, should I send my wife some flowers? Just remind me every 2 weeks that you should stop on the way home and like think
aided.
of her.
Yeah.
That's aided, right? But is it disingenuous? Because they're like, oh, you were just thinking about me, and you're like, well, I got the notification.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I got the notification though. Like, you know, also like you got to think like when you're thinking about timed, like you have to be able to intercept it because like you could get into a big fight the night before. Like, you're sleeping on the fucking couch, and you're like, hey baby, I was thinking about you. Hope you have a good day. And you're like standing in front of her like after a big fight, and you're like,
oh yeah,
oh fuck.
You stay home one day, and then all of a sudden she gets like a text like that.
Just thinking about you at work
while you're
or whatever.
Just like watching TV, and she gets a text like, hey, what do you want me to take you for dinner Friday? And she's like, what? Yeah.
God.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like I mean, it sucks because you know men are like so like you don't want you're like a system. Like, what's the problem? We're not connecting enough. Okay, we should do a home date every Wednesday. Like, this is how I think. You know, I'm imagining it's like similar to other men, but it's like, all right, we should have a home date and share a bottle of champagne every Wednesday. Reconnect. It's cheap. Whatever we do steak dinners, it's still going to be so cheap. We have a great time, you know. And we need to go on a date every 2 weeks at least. Whatever, you know, like and. Sometimes setting the reminders or having AI assistance or some kind of aid with that just can hold you to the plan that you already know needs to be executed anyways. You know, so it's not so much like, you know.
What happens if we rely on it so much though, and like everybody's using it, right? Like everybody's like, and again, I've used it before to help with presents, right? I'm like, damn, I don't know, I'm a fucking dude, you know, like. Okay, my wife is this old or whatever, you know, like, hey, help me get some presents for whatever for Christmas for this person at this age that's into this sort of stuff, right? And it's helped or whatever. What happens when it gets to the point where every wife's getting the same presents? You know, like it's learning on itself a lot of times where it's just like, you got a croquet kit or whatever too?
That would be a sign that your husband is getting lazy and like doesn't care, because if you even prompted a little bit and said like, you know, my wife's into this, she's this, whatever, you know, like, and because you care about the output, like it's going to be different. But if you go in there and be like, gifts for my wife's birthday, go. Yeah. If every guy who just puts in that much information is going to get the same stuff.
Okay. So you're resting all of your laurels on the fact you're going like, okay, it's okay because I'm prompting nice. Like I'm a good guy because I'm prompting, and that's effort. What you're saying is effort.
Garbage
right?
in, garbage out. It's like, you know, like I said, it's like an amplifier. So if you're not even going to try to play the guitar, you're just gonna be like, make this sound pretty, and just like when you not even put effort, you know, into explaining, then it's like, that's kind of lazy. And you know,
you just go to a store and like whatever's closest to checkout, you're like, candle, oh this, oh that, or whatever. That's disingenuous too, like you know. But again, if you're like,
or gift card. Like gift card, which we all had to do. There's nothing wrong with gift cards. Like, you know, like it doesn't feel good when you get somebody a gift card or cash, even though a lot of
feels,
kids.
Doesn't it feel good to get a gift card or cash though?
Yes, it does.
That's the problem, right? It doesn't feel good to the person giving it because it makes you feel like they feel like it's disingenuous. But every time I've gotten a gift card, I'm like, guilt-free spending there.
Right.
You know?
I mean, it is like foolproof. It's like a great go-to.
Yeah.
You know, but you always feel like a gift to me. Like I do actually, like even when we were buying gifts for all the cousins' kids and stuff, like I did my best to like go on Amazon and try to think about each kid's like, oh, you know, I seen them drumming on a thing or whatever. Or I seen this. Like you're trying to buy something personal that's thoughtful. Yeah. You know, like I think I'm a good gift giver. I'm just like Marla's love language is definitely getting gifts, but I'm also bad at remembering like, oh shit, Marla's like overdue for me to like come home with some random flowers or a gift. You know. Yeah,
and you know you are good at giving gifts because Jackson still plays his Eye of the Tiger book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the little book that plays the classic rock songs. It's one of his favorite books, bro. Yeah. Yeah. So well done.
Got that for quite a few of the kids that year because I thought it was cool, like the little music playing. Oh yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with gift cards, but yeah, it gets like that. I guess it's best to just not be too judgy. Everyone's trying because it's kind of like I was talking about earlier about video games. Like somebody, like if you're in Skyrim and you get clairvoyance to help you find the next mission, you know, like is that cheating? Like we chose the game of life, and now we have this new tool that you can get good at and figure things out or aid you. Technology reminders, show me the path. Yeah. AIs, it's like the same kind of thing. Yeah, you know, it's like my character in this game decided to adopt that skill tree, you know, or whatever. Like, like everyone's got different ones.
But there's also the sense where, right, like, yeah, man, like I could put in a cheat code and like now I'm rich in the video game. But I know what also happens? The video game becomes less fun. Right. You ever put in a cheat code and you're like, wow, I can do anything now, and you're like, now I kind of don't even want to play the game because it's like, damn, the grind is almost what makes it worth it too. Yeah. So I guess that's also a part of the concern where you're like,
I wonder if that's how people like Elon Musk or people who get like the crazy money that we can't even wrap our heads around, if they get there, we're just like, yeah, I know how to, you know, because I don't think we've ever lived in a time where like people like the Bezos and Elon's like, because it is a game, you know, capitalism is a game, right? Have we ever lived in a time where like there's been this big of winners in the game where just like they're almost like, what's the next game? I'll launch my dick rocket now, you know, into the outer space, you know, like they just don't even know what to do now. They're just like, yeah, I'm here. The game's like they're done playing the game, like you know, like, and it's not like they can just be like, all right, I'm gonna start with a new character that's a warlock. You know, like, they can't be like, let me see if I can win. You know, I'm gonna start my next character. I'm gonna be born in, you know, Detroit or some like or worse place or maybe another country. I'm gonna see if I can win again. Yeah, it's like no, they're just waiting for death and they already won. Yeah, you know. Yeah, and you know, we've always had winners, but at the level of the Bezos, like I don't know if you ever went to that site and see how much he makes in a minute or a second, but it's insane.
Oh yeah, it is insane. And you know, like I'm kind of worried about Amazon, you know, like maybe not the right time of year to bring it up because everybody's using it, including myself, right? But like, you ever hear of enshittification, right? Where it's like,
what is it?
It's called enshittification. It's like a term about how like things are progressively like in like the world of commerce and shit. It's always just gonna get worse, right? Like things always like you're gonna lose quality. And it's going to cost more money, right? And so, like, you think back of, like, an easy one is, like, Netflix, right? You go, okay, back when Netflix was first starting, like, they came out the door and they had competitors and they're like, all right, Blockbuster, all right, you know, video stores, like, you know, whatever it is, $6.99, you're going to get 2 DVDs sent to your house. You can do this, you know, 10 different times in the course of a month, and you're like, dude, this is a great deal. Like, holy, and they have more selection than Blockbuster. They never have the movie that I want, right? Right. And they do this thing, right? Blockbuster goes out of service, you know, goes bankrupt or whatever. Then they do like the digital thing, and then they offer you less, right? And then they go, oh, now we're going to do like the ad version. Like, don't worry, like that's going to be free. Now the price that we were paying for Netflix is the ad version, and then the premium tier is the version without ads, right? And then they're like, oh, you want 4K? Now it's whatever, and now we're paying more money for Netflix than we ever paid at Blockbuster, you know. And it's like the same thing when you go on like with Uber, right? I did the same exact thing, you know, not knocking it or whatever, you know, I drive it, but like it came in and was like taxis are out there. Okay, you know, they came out with these great deals.
Take over the market, and then when you own the market, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you pay, you know, like, again, paying drivers really, really good, you know, like, they were competitive. Damn, this is such a good price. The taxis go away. Now that there's not taxis available, what do? Raise the fucking price. Now they raise the price. Now what do? Like, they got to make their fucking shareholders more money. So what do? They start taking from the drivers. Now it's like they take from the drivers. The taxis aren't there, and you're paying more for Uber than a lot of times you were paying for taxis.
And Uber, especially from day one, they said, like, our plan is to set it up for AI driving, or for so we won't even have to deal with people. Like, that's so hard to go work and like dedicate yourself. Like, people are doing it full time, knowing like they have your obsolescence planned in. Like, you're going to be obsolete, you know.
Yeah.
And Amazon, that's all Bezos has ever done, is like run it out as a loss just to take over market.
Yeah. And what happens when it's gone, right? Like, we have this sense wherever we all make the joke, and it's not even a joke. It's more like a realization that we all kind of laugh about or whatever. But it's like, okay, yeah, of course you're going to ship it to my house today for cheaper, and it might not be available in the store, right? But also, you know, you see all over the place, like, go to a mall now. You know, go to all these places, again, connection zones, you know, where people were, you know, meeting each other and stuff. And like, these places are empty, and a lot of these places are barely holding on. But what happens when they don't hold on anymore? Right. Now they have the market. Now what do you think happens?
Right.
The price goes up because they control the market. Now, again, the things that right now we're like literally like dooming these like local companies and these local businesses and even big businesses, you know, that have storefronts. And they're like doomed because we're trying to save the money. But what we're really doing is just kicking the can down the road and allowing all of these other businesses to go away and give all the power to these super companies like Amazon that's going to really have us by the balls, because monopoly doesn't exist if nobody else can compete, right? Like, you know, monopoly is good when you get it in the front, right? And you're like, okay, I see the trend or whatever. But also, like, how did monopoly's, you know, protection work for Blockbuster? Everybody wanted the digital shit. Like, okay, you can try to protect them if you want. I'm not going to fucking Blockbuster, and they just went out of business. Right. You know, it's like, you can't you can't force people to use the product. And that's the same thing that's going to happen. Like, we can have monopolization laws in place or whatever, but you can't force people to go into stores. Yeah.
Well, we don't think about economies, like local economies and things like that. Like even the fact, like, I've always hated that at every exit on the freeway, you'll only find the franchise, you know, McDonald's, Taco Bell's, things like that. It's like, we can't bump up some food carts. We can't have a food cart like parking lot or something. Like, we can't like put that there to feed that local business or local community. Right. You know, because at the end of the day, places like Amazon, McDonald's, stuff like that, it's siphoning money right from your community. At least with a McDonald's or a store at a mall, they're hiring people, they're hiring managers. You know, it's a local franchisee, so there's a little bit of money sticking around your neighborhood, your community. But when it comes to like Amazon, it's completely gone.
And don't give McDonald's like this free pass either, because also like they do, but then also like you walk in and now like how many, you can't even walk up to the front counter, like use the kiosk, like, you know what I'm saying? Like now they're like driving you there. Also,
it'd be like Uber, where people are gonna obsolescence is gonna be built in. They're gonna eventually just have vending machine.
DoorDash. Same thing, right? Like, how many pizza places now, because it's cheaper for them, don't even offer delivery? They're just like apps, just go through DoorDash. At first, DoorDash was like this thing where you're like, wait, I can order food to my house? And then now nobody fucking delivers because they all relied on DoorDash. Now it costs fucking $60 to DoorDash. Right. Grocery stores, same thing. We're like, this is convenient for me to bag my own groceries. Okay, cool. Now, like the Walmart by my house, like literally just built like 70 self-checkout things, and there's like 3 lanes in the middle, like where the people actually check you out. Okay, so all of those jobs that used to exist are now gone. Right. And am I saving money on my bread? Nope. You know what I'm saying? It's like, again, in shitification. It came as like something that you thought you wanted or something for convenience.
But I hope that you know, maybe miss a scan from time to time. You know.
Do you steal?
I mean, at some point it's like, you know, especially when you come up always having somebody bag your stuff and stuff. Like, I'm terrible at bagging. Like, when I first like realized like this, they're actually gonna force me to do this. Like, this sucks, you know. Yeah. And I'm putting like all my groceries in one bag. You know, like I'm terrible. I just stuff it all in there. I'm like, it fits. You know. Yeah. Shit's getting crushed. You know, it's terrible. I'm not. You know, I wasn't meant to run a cashier and like bag groceries. Like, there used to be people, and I would know when they used to allow us to go to cashiers, I knew who the good cashiers were at Myers, you know, and they would be so good at like putting my frozen stuff together, stacking it nice. Like my whole experience unpacking my groceries was better if I found these like two people, you know.
Exactly.
Now it's horrible. Now it's just like I said, I just stuff as much as I can in like 2 bags.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, I used to be married to a person that would sometimes accidentally come home every single week with nail polish. And I'm like, didn't see it on the receipt. And I used to give her so much shit. I'm like,
she'd be like,
stealing.
I work for them. I
and she was just like, oh, you know, like corporations or whatever. And then like, and I always give her shame. But then she'd be like, how did you watch the last UFC? I'm like, oh. I'm like, well, that's different.
Yeah, it's digital.
Exactly.
It's crazy. Like, it was funny is if remember growing up on every VHS tape, there'd be like this big like disclaimer, like FBI is gonna come knock on your door if you try to copy this videotape. If you try to copy this, you're going to jail. Yeah. And now it's like, you know, stuff like that is shared and uploaded and torrented like at such a high level, but you just, you know, don't even think about it.
Yeah, just broke the system, right? You're like, what, are you going to arrest everybody? But
yeah,
you wonder sometimes.
They're like just don't even, FBI is not even going to worry about this no more. Like, it's like they just gave up on the whole thing, you know?
Until you leak something confidential, and then they're just like,
right.
Did you download fucking Neighbors 2 or whatever? You're like, what?
Yeah. You got to knock on your door because you downloaded like the Zeitgeist movie or something. Yeah,
yeah, right. You never know.
Or some kind of anti, or
I've thought before about that too, where I'm like, wouldn't it be fucked up if the government, every single time you hit incognito on your cell phone, it just started recording?
Yeah, I thought about that. Like that's when you want your put eyes on things,
right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't know what people look at when they flip on incognito, but you turn a camera on, when most people turn on incognito, you got some blackmail, bro. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're literally telling a corporation, like, don't look at me.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, bro.
It's like, oh, so and so just went hid behind that wall. Like, like you look guilty.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be. Yeah, I would imagine it's all in the cloud. It's all in some data center. A lot of hours of people.
I heard recently that Google had some sort of lawsuit about incognito stuff. Like about like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't as incognito as, again, not turning your camera on and recording people, but like that the data wasn't as, you know.
They're still collecting something.
Yes.
Yeah. It's only going to get crazier to like navigate the world that we're going to. And I kind of got this theory that as like the world gets more, you know, not knowing what's really coming from somebody, or not knowing like what's real, what, you know, just things getting slippery, reality gets slippery, that people will kind of like turn more to like local community and local things. Like, okay, I know this, like our local influencers, local, you know, because it's just like, oh, I can almost reach out and touch this person, or I know kind of where they live, or I know that community, or like, oh, I know that street, like, because, you know, these AI like video things can generate this. Like if you're a travel videographer, you could probably be a fake travel videographer that we don't even know if you're really traveling to the Philippines, you know, like you could just be, you know, who knows, but like, you know, and I think just people wanting to grasp onto some kind of anchor, you know, will kind of bring people back to
you'll
families,
only know what's real,
communities,
right?
businesses, networks, local networks, things like that. It's just gonna be some kind of indisputable reality amongst all the digital generated chaos. Yeah, you know,
like I might have my AR glasses on and I might be in some snowy snowscape, but like at least we're in the same general area. I know you're around.
Yeah,
right?
I can poker chic. Like, he's here. He's real.
Yeah. Oh,
but
man.
I don't know what we do about, because like some of the data on like the population going down and stuff like that is scary. Like to think that like younger generations are just not pursuing like, you know, and it's kind of back to what we were talking about earlier about like, oh, we get rid of religion, like, oh, we don't need this, but it was a massive tool for bringing people together and giving people a structure. And then it's like, do we do the same thing with like the nuclear family and like relationships? And just, it's just like, oh, no, it's not how it's meant to be. We could do whatever we want, you know?
Yeah. The population thing's tricky because it's, you know, if you're looking at humanity as a whole, we're like, okay, we're okay, you know, but it's the bottom like most, the countries with the most poverty are, their population's growing at the fastest rate, and so like that's gonna cause like a crazy situation, like probably pretty quick. Like I heard, like even I want to say it was like I think it was like 2018, 2020 or something, like between like 2018 and 2030, like Indian youth or whatever, the amount of kids that they had was going to match in that time period America's population. Like just in that like 10 years, it was going to be like bloop, like already crazy. And it's like, what happens when the population grows so much in all these like areas of poverty? And then like we're over here just like, yeah, man, like, like Amazon or whatever. It's like they're going to want what we have.
Well, at any point we can always open the door and take as many people as we want from them and bring them in,
At that rate. I mean, again, how much can you take in and that was India.
Right.
There was I can't remember what the South American country was, but there was like one in South America that was really big where it was like populating so much. I think Ethiopia might have been like another one that was like growing at like a crazy rate where they're like, they're gonna be like up there with like China and stuff, right, like within the next like couple decades. And you're like, what does that look like for the world when you have like in these areas? And again, I can't remember the name of the book that I was reading about it, but they were saying like, okay, where do terrorist organizations come from? The poorest countries. The Afghanistans or whatever.
If they resent you because of your Amazon and all that stuff.
Yes.
And like your smugness or whatever. And
yeah. And they're like, and again, hopefully, I guess you can only hope that maybe technology will increase at a speed that will lift everybody up. Like, okay, well, maybe like with AI, we'll have so much of this answer. And like, yeah, like make their desert countries like have fucking vegetation and like make sure that they have boom, boom, boom. Like we could actually use it to like make it where maybe they don't, where the bottom line of poverty is like somewhere that isn't so bad that they'd want to like take from someone else.
You kind of see like some signs of it. Like, I don't know if you've gotten any of these videos, but like I'll watch this like manufacturing video and it's like in India and it's like a whole community involved with like making a basketball, and it's like shows like this little shop is stripping these tires down and melting this rubber and then turning it into sheets. And then some kid picks it up and takes it down the street to like this other place that's like cutting out the strips needed to make a basketball and then testing the rubber ball. And then this one puts a cover on it and then whatever. And then they package it and they test it and then then they stuff it into a crate, and then it comes over like there's lots of like shops like that online that people are like buying this stuff. So like manufacturers moving into other countries besides just China. And that you think about how much wealth that creates, just those stupid basketballs in that little small village, and it's really like ingenuitive, like the ingenuity is like really cool what they're doing. Like they're figuring out, but you're probably using technology to figure it out, And same thing with like virtual assistants in the Philippines and things like that's crazy. That's generating a good amount of money for them and savings here. So like that connected like world could definitely hit more internet that is out there. I think like connecting people. Like if you're selling something like a basketball or your services as a virtual assistant, like if you can connect with other countries and find buyers, distributors for things, that's huge.
You're always so optimistic and I really appreciate it because I'm like, when AI takes all the jobs, we're gonna need those basketballs back.
We need to make the basketballs again.
Like dang, like eventually all these jobs are gonna go away. I don't know what we're gonna be doing,
Right.
But like that does speak to, there's a book in the 80s that it revolves around like the making of a pencil. Right. And they're just and that talks about like, again, like no one person can make a pencil, like in the same way that, people from all over the world economy creates. It's like, damn, trees are cut down in this country,
right.
in order to,
the lead
and
is
then
mined here.
And it's like a global thing just for us to get a pencil,
Right.
And so, that's an optimistic viewpoint that, hey, we're all going to be relying on each other. But
I mean, UBI is still going to be a thing, I think, like at the end of the day, like, and it's also kind of like, if you think about like mankind, like we've all contributed. Like AI is something we've all created. Like like our like people before us. Like even if you didn't make the content that it scraped, like you created the infrastructure that allowed people to drive to work to make that content or whatever. Like it is a human accomplishment that we all get to benefit from. Robots too. It's been all the collective effort of mankind up till now. You know? And so it's almost like we've saved up for retirement for a very long time. So like now if you can have robots doing a bunch of stuff, like in my mind, it's not for a few to benefit. It should be some kind of UBI that comes out eventually that helps like, relieve the stress of things,
Yeah.
And whether that's like a high quality life wage, eventually it could be. Yeah. But you can, but even if you're giving everybody $1,000 a month or something, that'd be huge.
Yeah.
Even starting there, and then it scales. But I think it could work because most people don't want to do nothing, and and you also can't judge somebody like because they do something that wouldn't make you happy.
Of course.
But everybody's gonna find a way to find fulfillment in their day today. And I don't care if it's playing a video game or if it's starting a business or whatever. But I trust people will, they're not just gonna go around being miserable and trying to make other people miserable. Is that too optimistic?
I'm like,
you're like, I know.
Okay, I'm a data person. Can you show me? Like, hey, like I think a lot of people struggle in retirement and shit, like with that sort of thing, right? Where they're like, man, what's my purpose now? Like they have their day to day, and again,
well, especially if you worked for 30, 40 years, waking up at the same time every day and going to work,
But maybe it does become more like, okay, like, you'll have your routines where you're like, okay, like no one's working, like, all right, we're all meeting down at this community park where everybody goes, and like the yoga is happening that day. Like, oh, everyone's doing group yoga, and like it's almost like a retirement community, but a whole country.
So you've been in the workforce enough to know this too, is that the universe or the laws of the universe has a way of dealing, like how many people do you know that retires and you hear like a year, 2 years later that they passed away? Like that's my first question when somebody says like they're about to retire is like, you got plans? What are you going to be doing?
Yeah.
Because I honestly feel like if you don't use it, like you just fall back to the ground, like it's just like built in, so it's like, you got to stay busy. You got to feel useful, have the vibes, have the energy of someone who's like feels useful, or else you just fall down.
And I think, there's obviously a lot of people that will retire too. And just like, like I have somebody at work whose dad's 90 something years old. Like, man, I've been retired for 30 something, 30 years, and it's like, again, like it doesn't always have to be like a thing or whatever, but like probably like a mentality of just like having that purpose, right? Like, like finding things to do around your house, around your community or whatever. Whereas there's some people that look at it like, okay, once I get done working, like that's it.
Lazy
like,
boy,
man, like that's it, but then there's other people that are like, cool, now I have an opportunity. I'm going to travel more. Like I'm going to do this. I'm going to like, like really take care of myself, or again, like, go on walks every day. And like, it's a completely different mindset for some people.
So like a UBI for somebody younger, it'd be easier for them to be like, well, I'm definitely not going to sit here. I'm going to go do stuff. But I do understand that it's hard for somebody who's worked somewhere for 40, 50 years to just all of a sudden be like, nope, you don't have to be up at 7 this Monday. You don't have to be at work at 7. Just, like that's a hard adjustment. Like and to try to figure that out, like I've always thought that even with trying to start my own business, I was like, if I'm ever successful, can I really trust myself to like wake up every day? Like I have a job right now and I show up late 15 minutes, like a day or two a week. like if I'm my own boss, like this could get bad really. I mean, I get a Christmas break and my schedule's shifting. So like, do I even have the discipline to
do you think it's hard? Do you think it's harder for people when they retire for like, generationally? Like I think our generation, not talking shit on the generations before us, but I think our generation bears a lot more of the responsibility of like household chores and shit, right? Like most people I know, they're like my age and my generation, like usually do their own laundry and like, like we'll cook sometimes, not, like it's kind of like a group effort, right? Where if we go back to like our grandparents or before that, like again, that was always like woman stayed at home, and then I took care of the children, which is, it is a task, not knocking that. And then the guy went to work. But like when a man retires in a situation like that, like, is that a hard thing to pick up when you're like, okay, cool, now I'm 62. Like if I retired right now or whatever, like I would feel like, damn, there's a lot of shit I got to do. Like I got to do my kids' laundry. Like they got to eat every day. You know what I'm saying? Like I could, like my own life routine would just like, like I feel like it's a full-time job in itself or whatever. And again, even in a marriage or something, it could feel that way too, just shared. There's always something to do. But if you were always like taken care of, right? you
Right.
know. And again, you were taking care
Yeah,
of them
don't leave
financially,
the
not
lazy boy,
knocking it.
sweetie. I'll bring your dinner to you. Like
Right.
your wife's still there, and she's not retired. So that's probably why women outlive men.
Yeah, and they're continuing their thing, right? They're doing your laundry and whatever, and they're bringing you food and whatever. It's like, well, that's a lot of time that you could be taking to like actually better yourself too, because
Right.
again, that's a sense of purpose or whatever. But like, it's hard for somebody that's 60 years old or older to
Habits
like
are
learn
hard
new,
for anybody.
to learn a new
Yeah.
habit, like doing your laundry or whatever. You're like, what the, you know,
Right.
like I can, yeah, you know, like it's the old meme or whatever where it's like, you know, when a guy does something or whatever, and it's like they picture like the confetti and shit, like I helped or
Yeah.
whatever. You're like, what?
Yeah, usually the answer is kind of like, it's always like, you know, I'm gonna go up to my cabin more or something, or I'm gonna go out fishing more, or I got me a fishing boat not too long ago, like as part of my retirement plan. But you can only do that kind of stuff so much, you know. Like what really helps is probably like the daily routines, which,
Yeah.
you know, like you see those old timers going and meeting up at like the Target cafeteria, you know, or the McDonald's for
Sure.
a coffee. Like I think that's huge, like that community. And
I would love to meet up with you every day.
that's what we're gonna do. I mean, someday I hope that we end up at McDonald's and with the robots, and you know, at least one day a week with a group of other, you know, distinguished old gentlemen. And
Yeah, talk shit about our wives and just,
Yeah.
you know, sitting there, no newspaper, but same sort of concept,
we'll
right?
still be trying to keep up with technology, whatever that looks like in 30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Trying to act like we're still surfing on the wave of like understanding it,
Every generation's doing that.
but we're
right?
really just stubborn guy. Like it's gonna catch up. Like you
It's
know,
gonna catch up, bro. I already feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you all doing? Like the TikTok dances and
I
shit?
I
I'm
can't
just like, man,
get the
this
live
is-
streamers, like these kids that are making tons of money, like live streaming. Like, cause I never really watch live streams, so I just kind of
Yeah.
didn't go down that path. But you hear about the audience they get and the money they're making, and I'm just like, or people watching live streaming even video games is weird to me. But now it's like these kids are going out there in like the world with like doing live streams and just setting
Yeah.
up situations that are weird, and people are just watching. It's like, who has time to watch like a, you know?
Mhm.
But it's probably like what we do is probably just while they're doing dishes.
I was gonna say like, well, I happen to have the time sometimes.
Yeah, it's like how many hours did I spend watching Gold Rushes this week in like
Yeah.
bullshit time?
You're wasting your time.
But I
Like,
just
anyways.
like put up a block there. It's like, but no live streamers.
Yeah, watch ghost hunters. Like, did I find a ghost? Nope.
Yeah. And people might be watching the live streamers because it probably feels a lot like me watching Gold Rush, where it's like it's not demanding on my attention, like, you know, because some shows or something you watch might be demanding. You don't want to miss nothing. You know, some
Mhm.
shows you do not watch on your phone. You watch on your TV.
And then you have to
You
be in
know.
a certain mood to even watch them. Where you're like,
Right.
man, this is a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I got to be in the right place, right time, and then I'm watching this shit. Right.
Right. So there's like certain content, certain places. Maybe I'm missing out on something there. But it's like, it's just funny how sometimes you get these blind spots. Like you'll do these things and then you'll find out that there's this whole other group of people doing this thing that's getting really popular over here. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
do I need to adopt another avenue of consumption
Right.
into my life?
Yeah, but then also it's like it would just mean that you're putting down another one, right? Where you're like, well, I guess I'm not watching Gold Rush anymore.
Right.
You know, it's all about the balance. You just got to find ways to spend your time. You only got so much time, right?
Right.
But you know, again, in retirement, you know, that might be what you do. Is watch those again, projects. Like again, that might be the thing where I was saying like, oh well, if you're getting everything done for you, but also like, how many things do you wish you could do? Like around your house. I mean, it's crazy how much you do while you still work. Like,
Right.
this is a nice, you know, you're obviously very motivated, which is good, you know, but like how many people put things off to weekends only and like these
Right.
like little pieces of time where they're like, you know, like that's why people, you know, there's like this little period of time between like, you know, mid 50s,
Mhm.
70 years old where their fucking grass is immaculate, bro. You know,
Right.
because it's like that's their fucking doing the dishes, you know,
Right.
like they could put a lot of time and effort into that.
Yeah.
Or again, like you ever go to someone's house, this is how I feel. Like you ever in your house is very nice or whatever, but like you go to someone's house and you're like, you ain't got a scuff anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, damn, dude, like you decorated this shit so nice or whatever. Like every single piece of carpet's nice. Every single couch looks like it was just cleaned. Like
Right.
like your dishes are empty. Like, geez, oh, Pete's, you know,
Right.
like where again, they could just really dedicate, you know, their time into a lot of the things that they didn't have when they weren't retired.
Right.
Just making their life, you know, an upgrade, I guess. But
Yeah, it's like one of those things. Like for me, I always find it when I meet different people. It's like there's always something that inspires you about them or whatever. Like so, like my house could look you know, I could walk into some, and I know friends that I have, like, I walk in their house and it's like nowhere near anything like mine, but I can still appreciate certain things that they set up or have, you know, and it's just like that acceptance thing. I'm like, there's no right answer,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
You know, and some people get too consumed about like trying to adhere to certain standards, because there are like standards of what, you know, what the average person would consider a clean house or a good looking decor or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But is there anything wrong with having, you know, completely wrong decor? Is there anything wrong with having a hammock in a bedroom versus a bed? You know, like, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
And I would probably admire that, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, a NASCAR flag
life,
just means you really like NASCAR.
Yeah. In another life, I would also have a hammock in my bedroom instead of a bed, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I could see myself having made the same decisions as you. Like, there's no right answers.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, again, when we get back to realities, you know, I've been reading a lot about that. You know, I've read like Man's Search for Meaning. And
that's a great.
Yeah.
That was one of the first like deep books I ever read where I felt like I like lived that experience. Like, so it's like maybe 20% of what it really felt, or 10% of what it really felt like, or less. I don't know, but it was just like when I turned it off, I was like, I'm still in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
You know, the way he describes like people's like how their energy changed, and how when you see somebody's energy go down is when you knew that they were going to die soon.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it was just such deep writing. Like,
yeah,
I was there, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, like those are also like really good books to read when, you know, like I read it at a time where, you know, again, like my life felt a little chaotic and shit. And I'm like, man, like, how am I going to get through this shit? And then I'm just like, hold on a second. Every night before I went to bed, I'm like reading a book, and they're like, yeah, like most of my friends died, and like, you know, my family got thrown into a giant ovens and shit. And I'm like, okay, like, damn, it's not so bad, right? You know,
you're in a comfy ass bed, like feathers all around
How
you.
am I gonna deal with this?
Conditioned home.
I'm turning the air conditioner down, or whatever. You know, like, oh gosh.
At the end of the day, like, especially in America, like even in some of the poorer situations, you are living better than a king. You know, a couple hundred years ago, like the fact that we have hot and cold water everywhere we would need it, and that it drains and goes off, you know, and we never have to think about it. You know, that alone is amazing. Like hot water on tap, any room in your house where you would want hot water.
It's pretty amazing.
It's freaking amazing, you know.
Yeah, but the point I was getting to is like, you know, I want to say it was that book that kind of alluded to it at one point, where he's like, you know, you really can't compare yourself to other people, like even your siblings. Like everybody has such a different reality. Like you were, you know, like you even being born to your parents, you were born in a certain chronological order at a certain point in your parents' life that's completely different than even somebody that was 2 years later. Like, okay, well now they know more, now they whatever, you know, and like everybody's situation is just so different that, like, you know, it just doesn't make sense to compare yourself to anybody else's life and only to compare it to your own, right? You know, again, compare it to the day before. You know. Yeah,
I know we brought it up in a podcast before, but that whole movie theater example of like you leave the movie, you know, you walk, you know, you're watching a movie and it's your life, and you're seeing you and you're seeing your family members. You go into another theater and it's like the same characters, but they're all different, you know, and that's like the world through your mom's eyes. You know, like there's a character playing you, but it's not you. It looks and acts completely different, you know, like it's completely different because, you know, you're alone with yourself. You're thinking, you know yourself pretty well, you know, but other people get little glimpses and they're making their judgments on who you are based off that. You know, and you really can't affect it. Like they say, people only notice like 10% of the changes that you make or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, it's like just living that, you know, figuring out what game you want to play and what you enjoy doing. And, you know, that's a big part with this podcast, with this whole like setup here was actually, well, it was during when I was working on it, but I kind of, you ever like reach a conclusion and then you read something and it's like validating that you.
That's like, most of what I read is to validate my own thoughts.
no, say like you like, I think I need to be doing this. And then it's like the universe drops like some knowledge or some book on you. Yes. That's like, you've reached the right place. Yes. Here's to clear up what your understanding that you found, you know, kind of clears it. Yeah. But I was just kind of realizing like, you know, it's too much time alone. Like my brain's very fast, you know. Yeah. And I like creating, I like building, working on my house, working on generating ideas for the business things. But like, I need to be around people more, you know, and that's important for relationships too. Like how many relationships, I think a lot of relationships fail too, just because, you know, you meet this person that stands out in a crowd and you choose to go on a date with that person and then build a relationship and get married and things like that. And then you isolate yourself, you know, but if you go out with another couple or something and you see them interacting with people, you're like, oh yeah, that's why I'm with this person. Like, like other people find like they're good in crowds or they're interesting, you know, like that's, you know, it's like can kind of bring you back to it, but it does that as an individual too. When you hang out with people and you know, like, oh, I think they had a good time. I had a good time with them. Like, it's just good. And, so that was a big part about building this was like, just to get people, one, I'm lazy, so coming to me would be great. You know?
I'm so lazy.
Like,
I built myself a podcast studio.
I'd come over your house, but you don't really have the microphones, headphones, cameras, or lights. So why don't you just come over here?
Yeah, you're more a video prude. Yeah. I'm so lazy.
So it is one, just smart engineering, just trying to set up my life for like the less amount of mobility I have to be. Like, I hate driving places. I really just want to hang out in my backyard.
Yeah.
You know,
you can frame it around the encouragement that like, if you build it, they will come.
Right.
You know, like, hey, it's out here, right? Just walk in. You know, there's been so many times that like I've been like, oh, I want to go play my guitar or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, but you know, my electric guitar, I'm like, yeah, and then I got to hook it up. Oh damn, am I updated or whatever? Like, no shit, I forgot I unplugged that and took my cords to it. You know, it's like if it was ever just sitting there ready, like I probably play it all the time, right? So again, the more you're set up for just ease of entrance into your own hobbies,
right?
You know, it just means that you're gonna do it more.
And I heard like you know, when I was kind of wrapping this all up, I heard Theo Vaughn was on Joe Rogan, and he kept going like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just off today," and I'm sorry, you know. He kept doing that shit, and then Joe was just like, "Stop it, man, stop," you know. And he's like, "You know, you get weird when you spend too much time alone." Yeah, you know. He's like, "You come out here, and everybody loves you, and they tell you they love you, and everything, and you seem like you do better." Yeah, you know. But then you go, and you isolate yourself, and then you come and you act weird, you know. Like, and I'm like, yeah, that's like. You know, I think a lot of people kind of suffer from that same thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's, you know, again, it's affirming too. And again, you're around people that care about you and love you and stuff. Because again, like, you know, when you're doing the, you know, when you have your thoughts and they just cycle and cycle, you know, I'm an overthinker for sure, you know. So like, I do that a lot where there's so many times in the day where I'm like, shut up. Right. You know, and it's like I feel so much more at peace when I catch myself in those moments where again, the ruminations where you're just talking to yourself over and over. But like when you're connected with somebody and you're around, like a lot of times that doesn't happen. You go with the flow of things. You're more connected to the moment, right? Instead of like, oh, what's gonna happen, you know. And again, I think that's where a lot of times, you know, learning in therapy and stuff and like working on different aspects is like the affirmations, you know, kind of do the same sort of thing where when you're in those moments where you're like, hey, you start to overthink things and you're just like, hey, every decision I make is the right decision. Right. And like, hey, I'm in the moment, like everything's okay. Or if you're thinking about something negative and it's freaking you out or whatever, you go, I give myself permission to not think about that. It doesn't make me a bad person or irresponsible to not think about that right now. Giving myself a break, you know. But a lot of times that there's like a natural thing that we do with, you know, when you're with somebody, you know, connecting with somebody, you know, in person that you don't even have time to get into those rabbit holes because you're just, you know, catching up and communicating, and it just feels good to turn your mind off from your own thoughts sometimes. Yeah. As fun as AI is and like all these tools to play with and stuff like that, like nothing's like more interesting than like the biological brain, like what's going on in our own heads. Like we're talking about, we all live different realities. Like I enjoy diving in and understanding people different or having open-ended, free-flowing conversations with somebody, you know. Like it's, you know, it's the most interesting book or experience. Like it still stands as like one of the best experiences you can have, you know, when you're really clicking. But and plus, you know, like hobbies are great, but like also there is too much looking up UFO shit on Reddit. Like there's too much, you know, it gets to a point where it's too much. But all it takes is like one little like post or something that like shows the UFO footage, and it's just like, oh yeah, I forgot that's out there. And now all day or half the day you're like diving down the UFO rabbit hole or certain rabbit hole. Yeah, you know, it's nice to stop by once in a while. But it's also very good to make interesting conversations. You know, because now you can talk about UFOs. You know, But I think that's a good spot to end it because I'm concerned that this thing will run out of room. But okay, I love you, buddy. Thanks for coming on. Love you too, man. First, congratulations on the first of the podcast. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have you out. We gotta make you a staple. Always fun talking to you. All right, man. I'm gonna hit the button.